Hey friends, welcome back to Castro Valley News Live. If you guys haven't heard about it, today at about noon, Governor Gavin Newsom kind of laid out some guidelines in regards to the possibility of, and I'm trying to put this in the words that he put it in regards to the shelter in place being modified or lifted or some of the above. He did provide quite a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in kind of a vague way. There is no date for when the shelter in place will be lifted. The kind of vague information that he put out was the possibility that it could be within the next few months. With that said, he did provide quite a few caveats in regards to how that may come about. And I didn't vote for the governor. I didn't vote against him. So I really don't have a horse in the race. But I think what he has put forward is pretty, how do I say this? It's pretty, it's a thorough. The criteria that they've got for any potential change in the lockdown, I think, is really thorough. And there's six factors that he laid out, and these are factors that he has um, state teams working on. I'm assuming it's team. These teams will be made up of his staff or staff made up of officials that are worthy of his trust. But those six criteria are including expanding testing and contact tracing. So that means that more people need to be tested, which we all kind of know, and contact tracing for the people who have been infected. Um, that's the first one. The second one is going to be preventing infection of high risk patients, which are senior citizens and the folks with compromised immune systems, problems with their immune system. So those folks, that's two. Then there's going to be three, to keep track on the needs of our hospitals to keep up with potential future surges, which means making sure that all the hospitals have the protective equipment and are staffed. The next one is to engage academic organizations for research for therapeutics and potential vaccines. That's an important one. And I'm hoping, I understand that Stanford is just buzzing on this, which is great, and a lot of other educational institutions, can't say that right, let me try one more time. Educational institutions are working on, these sort of therapeutics that that may ease this virus or a potential vaccine. Then this is the fifth one, is the ability for schools and businesses to support physical distancing. And I think that is the main thing that's going to really be going forward no matter what happens, is that physical distancing is going to be very important. It's going to be key and part of anything going forward. So what I got from that was, if say your restaurant reopens at some point, uh, restaurants will be asked, or there might be maybe guidelines going forward for less tables so people can be further apart from each other. I would assume your wait staff are going to be wearing masks and gloves, and then the last one is going to be, the number six is the ability for our officials, government, to be able to reinstate the shelter in place if needed. Meaning that if something changes with the shelter in place, if it's eased to some extent, if the virus comes back and there's more outbreaks, that they would reinstate those some of those controls. So it wasn't an earth shattering uh, press conference, but it did, like I said, gave some light at the end of the tunnel. And I really should have started with the fact that we're kind of at this point is that we are, we have been fantastic in our shelter in place capabilities. We've done it. We're doing it. I don't want to say we've done it. We're doing it, and we need to continue doing that. And that was really what Governor Newsom had said. Also, that uh, no matter what, that curve has to be flattened even more for any possibility of the shelter in place to be lifted. And it can't be stressed enough how much this is really hurting our local businesses. I, I can't imagine your livelihood being forced to close and you not, number one, your business is your pride and joy, and you're not able to be at that business that you've worked so hard to build up. And the longer this is, the more our businesses are hurting, and I think everyone realizes that. So if and when these measures are loosened or lightened, and the governor said, I'm trying to find out, remember exactly what he said. He said something like loosening. A lot of mentioning of the word loosening of the stay-at-home order. When these regulations are loosened, I think it's really incumbent and it really behooves us all to support our neighbors, our local businesses as much as we can to get to help them bounce back from this horrible, horrible time. And it's kind of it's kind of downplaying the situation to say that one group is hurting more than others, because everyone's hurting. Um, it's having an effect on how our children are being educated. And to their credit, the teachers are doing the best that they can, and the administrators at every school site and the school districts are doing the best that they can. But I think really the best thing that we can do now, and the Chabot Theater had this on their this sign on their marquee, this message on their marquee, to bear with me as I scroll over to try and find the photo on our feed. And to their credit, the folks at here it is. The folks at the Chabot are just killing it with these messages. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself, which is great. And I think the more that we do that, and the more that we spread that kindness, the better everyone is going to be. Because honestly, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times we can't see another person's smile under our mask, but a kind word, say hello, ask how you're doing. Um, can I do something for you? And I mentioned this in, I think, the past two episodes that we've done. It's really important to not just check on your senior citizen neighbors, just check on your neighbors and say, hey, how you doing? You need anything? How's life in your house? Because a lot of us are kind of existing in the realm and the world of our own homes, because we've all limited our trips out, which is what we need to do. And I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to mention about the the governor's presser at noon, press conference at noon. Light at the end of the tunnel, a glimmer of light. Um, he did not give any date for when it would be lifted. Like I said, he said maybe within the next few months, but a lot of that is really, really dependent on how we react to those six factors and how his teams investigate in those six factors. So basically, the more we shelter in place and the more that we are diligent in our social distancing, the closer we will be getting to some sort of semblance of normalcy, which I keep hearing everyone saying that this whole situation is just going to change how life is for a significant amount of time. And that's probably the reality. But I think, like I said, the more diligent we are in social distancing and doing what we can to shelter in place, we will take more steps towards some sort of return to normal life. Um, Getting on with the show, we are going to have Chef Igor calling in just a couple minutes. There were a couple things that I wanted to bring up. I think it's really important for everyone to consider donating blood at this time. Our moderator will share the link for you to be able to do that. Unfortunately, because of the shelter in place, a lot of the donation places are not available. But if you go to the American Red Cross website, you can look up, actually, you can make an appointment through their website. I think from what I saw a couple days ago, you might have to go to Oakland. You might not. There may be other places that are closer, but it's really important that we consider that, because with the shelter in place, not a lot of people are donating. And you may not realize, I didn't know, 1 pint of blood can save up to 3 lives. And it often takes less than 30 minutes to do so. And there was a small message that came out, I think, from the CEO or one of the head folks with the Red Cross, who said, let's see, even with the shelter in place, individuals in our community, potentially even our neighbors, will continue to be in car accidents, need emergency room organ transplants, give birth to babies in critical condition, and need chemotherapy. In short, there will be lives that need saving through blood donations. Supplies are low because blood drives have been shut down due to the COVID shelter in place orders. So if you have time and you find the place in your heart to donate blood, please do so. We're really short in time because Igor's going to call. I think it's 7:15. I will try to breeze through this, and our moderator will share some links for this. Castro Valley Rotary, Castro Valley Matters, and the Castro Valley Chamber of Commerce are collecting donations to provide meals for Eden medical staff members. I think it's called Feed Eden. And there are also 2 other food trains. I think that's food trains, and our moderator has the links to those for the ER folks and the ICU folks. The concern is that these medical staff are very busy. They have very little time to leave the hospital during shifts. So if you could click on the link for Feed Eden or those meal train links. They were created by Kitty Mack. And you can donate towards meals for Eden staff, including Monday lunch and Wednesday dinner. So you can extend some gratitude to the heroes at Eden's emergency room and ICU. Diane has a question. Oh, she has a comment, pardon me. Diane has a comment. She works with people across the country, and Castro Valley High has been so impressive with the distance learning sooner and more efficiently than any other high school I've heard of. That is credit to the wonderful administrators at the Castro Valley Unified School District. Shout out to Superintendent Amati. She is great. We had her on one of our live shows, I think a couple of weeks ago. I think we've got Chef Igor on the line, and we're going to go to him, and we're going to take some of his comments and answer some of your questions. Is this Chef Igor?
This is Chef Igor.
The man, the myth, the legend. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. How are you doing in the shelter in place, the quarantine?
You know, it's been a up and down. What can we say? I currently live alone, so it's a little bit of a challenge that we're missing that connection right now. But at the same time, it's a great time to do a lot of home projects, whether it be, revolving around cooking or organizing your entire house, which I'm currently doing.
Cool. Now, let me ask a personal question. What are you cooking during the quarantine?
Oh, good question. I'm actually taking this as a great time to sort of jumpstart back into healthy eating. There is, of course, a shopping logistic. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, I'm just trying to really focus on like quick meals. I'm doing a lot of soups. I just made clam chowder the other day. I did a fairly healthy turkey lasagna. I've been live streaming a few things. So I did like a ricotta live stream and used my ricotta to make a lasagna. So trying to keep myself busy there. I'm actually debating what I should have for dinner tonight, but I'm thinking I'm just going to char some broccoli and make like a homemade teriyaki sauce, some tofu, and do, something flavorful, healthy that way.
Nice.
But I will also say during this time, I'm definitely not ignoring all the delicious heat on Castro Valley because everyone is delivering. Everyone has some great deals. We're actually lucky to have this place that I recently discovered called Krabby, and they do like those classic like shrimp boils, shrimp in a bag type of deal, and they deliver that. So I am guilty of maybe stuffing my face with shrimp and corn and Cajun spices.
I hear they're good. They're on East 14th, right?
I believe so, yeah. I found them on the Grubhub app. So
nice.
Check that out, guys.
Yeah, good stuff. So where do you want to start? Do you want to? We have a few questions here. Do you want to dig into those, or do you want to talk about shopping first? And I really miss our reviews. It's one of the super huge among many downsides of the shelter in place. We can't do any reviews, but we could maybe do a takeout review.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We'll sit 6 feet apart. We'll eat lots of great food. So I'm totally open to that. And I completely agree with you. I miss doing our reviews. I actually miss working as a culinary instructor. This is, a time without my students. So it's been a little of a challenge there, but I'm still, keeping it fun and lively, doing Instagram live streams and answering questions on Facebook. So I think maybe I'll just talk a little bit about like shopping logistics. I'll talk about what are some great things that all of our Castro Valley residents and residents beyond can do at home. And then we'll answer some of the questions, and hopefully we'll get some more questions coming in while I just talk a little bit about the current state of what we can do in our kitchens.
Great.
So first thing, when it comes to shopping logistics, that's like a big issue. I personally am refusing to leave the house for the most part to go to the grocery store. So I am capitalizing on those shopping apps like Instacart and Postmates. Luckily in Castro Valley, we don't have a huge like Instacart backup, while larger areas definitely do. I remember once I placed an order just last week, and within like 5 hours it was at my door. So I was actually pretty lucky with that. Now, you may be able to answer this question, but is the Castro Valley Farmers Market still open?
Yes, it is.
Well, that's basically the answer to everything there. We still should be sticking with shopping locally, shopping seasonally, because right now we're in pretty much the prime beginning of the spring season. So asparagus right now is all over the place. Hopefully you'll find sugar snap peas. They should be coming in soon, as well as strawberries. So check the farmers market. If you guys are still out there and okay doing shopping outside of the house, then definitely work with that. And really try to get that produce, even though it's going to be hard to come by, but like still work around getting that produce. Yes, I love eating box pasta every night and breakfast and lunch and dinner, as much as anybody else, but really get that produce and let the produce dictate what the menu is. Let's say you got this beautiful asparagus from Safeway because it's on sale, or from the farmer's market. Maybe do like some chicken wrapped asparagus, or do some charred asparagus outside on the barbecue. Make it still an ordeal. I think what's important with us being stuck with the shelter in place is not to sort of put everyday cooking on a pause. It's actually a time to do the opposite and actually indulge on a little bit more cooking at home. Really work on that date night meal if you live with someone else, or work on a date night meal and treat yourself if you live alone like I do. Make yourself a little 3-course meal if you want. Study up on recipes. If there's something you've always wanted to learn, now's the best time to learn it because you have the time. Start your fermentation projects. If you're someone that's ever been interested in making like sauerkraut or kimchi, guess what? You have the time to actually tend to that at home quite a lot. In fact, just before this, I was doing some dishes and I was unloading the dishwasher and whatnot. And I'm like, why does my kitchen smell like something is sour, something is going bad? And I realized, it's the kimchi right next to the dishwasher sitting. I had my great friend Sandra Cho, her mother and her made some kimchi, brought some over. They dropped it off at my doorstep, and I also made some kimchi myself. So great time to start this fermentation project. I didn't include any recipes for you Castro Valley residents, but I'm more than happy to find one for you guys if you want to start those projects. Same goes for things like sourdough starters. If you ever want to make your own sourdough or like sourdough English muffins or sourdough pancakes, start that now. I think it's a great thing to do. Bakeries will often give you a piece of their sourdough starter, or you can just start one yourself at home. You can definitely find directions online. Again, I'm more than happy to answer questions or provide resources for anybody, but those are some of the great things that you should do at home. Really just capitalize on treating yourself. Get into the kitchen a little bit more now that we have the time. I pulled out my Julia Child books, and those are like anthologies of recipes. Excuse me. So really just diving into like homemade everything. Try not to. I'm not saying don't do it, because I love Prego like everyone. Or we can have a discussion. Ragu, Prego. I'm sure there's a war or a feud there. But like, make your own tomato sauces. Make your sauces. If you have a pasta machine, maybe make homemade pasta. If you've been sheltered place with your family, try to get them in the kitchen. If you've ever wanted to make homemade croissants, take the time. Everything takes a little bit more time. Like, actually do it. Try to break down recipes. How can I say, step by step, and not do any of the shortcuts that we often do. So that's sort of the best that I can say is really treat yourself, do some more time-consuming recipes where you can actually learn something. You want to educate yourself. It's a great time. And get yourself in the kitchen. That way you can distract yourself a little bit with what's going outside and still have a great time treating yourself.
It's probably very therapeutic as well. And like you said, occupying your time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And treating yourself and making yourself feel better that you've accomplished something that maybe you haven't before.
Exactly that. And then one thing that I'll mention now that I'll also mention at the end of our call is that I am totally open to be a resource for Castro Valley residents during this time. I'm at home most of the day, so feel free to just send me a Facebook message. If you're on Instagram, my Instagram is at Chef Igor Breyman. I'll post in the comments below so you have my information. And almost 24 hours, okay, we'll say 12 hours a day, I'll be answering questions for you guys or linking you up with recipes that I think would work really well. So I'm more than happy to be a resource for everybody.
That's great. And for folks who may not be familiar, we don't just call Chef Igor. He's a real chef. He's a legit chef. You teach at Google, correct?
Correct. I'm currently an instructor there at one of their teaching kitchens, the main teaching kitchen.
And give folks kind of a quick background of your culinary expertise.
Absolutely. I started in the restaurant industry, working through like some high volume, fast casual restaurants in San Francisco, worked Michelin star restaurants briefly, and then actually got invited to assistant teach at the cooking school at Cavallo Point in Sausalito. Cavallo Point is a beautiful resort up there, and that's where my teaching career really began. So I went from teaching there to teaching 8 through 8 culinary skills. I'm hoping down the line, something with Castro Valley Frank School District, we can create some type of kids and teens cooking program. So I taught K through 8, worked a few other jobs, including sales, and then started teaching at Sur La Table, ultimately becoming a resident chef at Sur La Table, which would mean that I had my own cooking school with a staff under me. We would teach 3 to 5 classes a day, create our content, host private events. And I've taken everything I've learned throughout the years, and now I'm teaching in a great place called Google.
Every time you say that, I'm even more impressed than the last time. It's awesome, and even it feels even better because I know you are so incredibly passionate about everything that has to do with food and cooking.
Thank you, and yeah, I definitely am. In fact, I had a great experience just the other day. I made some basic Indian food. I did like a chana masala. I made some really good tatka dal, some rice. And I poured myself a little bowl of everything, sat outside my backyard, and just enjoyed the silence. That's something that all of you guys can enjoy right now, too. It's almost like this meditative process of eating, not having to talk to anybody, enjoying the textures in your mouth, all the flavors, enjoying that atmosphere around you. And why it was such a good experience is because as a chef and as a culinary instructor, often I'm cooking for others, and I don't even really, it's not that I don't like what I cook, but chefs we cook for others. We don't really cook for ourselves. Like, we're okay with top ramen. But I was able to actually receive my own gift and enjoy it outside. And that little ephemeral piece of art, this like tangible piece of art that we can taste, we can use all of our five senses with, I was able to enjoy and really receive my gift. So it was a great experience I had just sitting in this shelter in place and enjoying dinner in the backyard.
We actually have a question that just came in. What is your specialty cuisine?
Oh, that is the hardest question. Like, geez, talk about like the worst Tinder question. I'm kidding. Because I love cooking everything. One thing I never thought that I would master was French patisserie. So right now I do teach croissant classes, macaron classes. So croissants are one of my favorite things because there's such a like awe-inspiring moment with students once they can actually master it and they see that end result coming out of the oven. I grew up in a Ukrainian household, so Eastern European cuisine is up my alley as well. Things like golubцы, which are cabbage rolls, borscht. My mother would always make. We do a really delicious vegetarian borscht that's slightly pickly as well. But I also studied under a Pakistani and a Thai chef, so I love spices. I love fresh herbs. I love spring rolls and curries and bright, bold flavors. Like often we have this harmony of the five flavors that we can taste in our tongue. And what I love about Pakistani, Thai, Vietnamese, etc. cuisine is that all those flavors aren't subtle. They're all like punching you in the face at the same time. But other than those, like I must say, like I'm a huge fan of Spanish cuisine. So I want to say like paella is like one of my things. And now that we're coming into the summer season, paella, the Spanish rice dish that's very communal, you can totally do on your barbecue. Once we have this shelter-in-place order removed, we will still be practicing social distancing and more than sure of that. But it's a great way to still get some people involved, still be socially distant in groups of 10 or less, but maybe have a nice little paella on the barbecue.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So do you want to go to the rest of the questions, or did you have some other things that you wanted to cover?
I think that's the gist of it. Just treat yourself right now, take some time to cook, and use what's local and seasonal, which we should be doing year-round anyway.
Absolutely. And the going back to our the topic of the farmers market, they never closed. They were deemed an essential business, an essential use as part of the shelter in place. And from what I understand, they have some pretty helpful and kind of how am I trying to say this? They are really on top of keeping people apart from the food, from each other, from the merchants. So it's not like a free for all like some people may think. Hopefully, but another question just came in from Jay. Do you cook with sous vide? SOUSVIDE, and what do you like to use it for? What do you use it for?
Great question. So I've used sous vide in the past. I don't really use sous vide in the present day. I use it just to be showy at times. I used to stage, which means work for free at Atelier Crène, which is Chef Dominique Crène's restaurant in San Francisco, and sous vide was used for almost everything. It was wonderful. The things that I do use sous vide for, if I ever use it, are things like pork tenderloin. Because that's something that you can actually visually still see a little pink, and it's okay to eat it pink, but it's just a perfect texture. If I had to give just a concrete answer, I lean toward the meats in the sous vide and lobster. Lobster sous vide is just the perfect texture. And for those of you that don't know what sous vide is you essentially vacuum seal some type of a product, and you put it in submerged into water, which is constantly circulated at one temperature. So technically you can't really overcook because let's say if we set our sous vide to 135, left something in there for 80 hours, it's still at 135. So you can get like just that perfect moment of time with any food. So things like pork tenderloin, lobster. I know some people do it with steaks and red meat, but then you generally have to give it a sear, some caramelization, and sort of taking it past the sous vide point. So those are the main things that I would say I would recommend or do on my own.
Nice. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah. I've also heard it's good for like yogurt making or like creme fraiche making, anything where you need, a nice, stable temperature zone.
Wow. So You mentioned this earlier. Namone said she would like to ask Chef Igor to share some easy bread recipes. A lot of people have been baking bread or making sourdough starters. I was told that bakeries used to give those away.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is a great thing. Like, if you're going to start anywhere in the kitchen right now with doing something that maybe you haven't done before or something that takes a little bit more time, now's the time to start working with yeast. Start making those breads, start fermenting things, have some fun with it. So what I'm going to do is in the comments below, I'm not sure if we've done it yet, but I'm going to supply you guys with a great focaccia recipe that I use and a great soda bread recipe that I use. Focaccia is this great, sorry about that, Italian bread. It's like slightly crusty, nice and chewy, really nice and airy, and it's very versatile. So it can either be baked out flat on a sheet pan. You get a little bit more surface area. You can add more flavors on top. You can even bake it in a loaf pan and make sort of more so like a white bread, sliced white bread type of thing. You can even bake it as round loaves. So I'll supply you guys with that recipe there, one of my favorite. But another question that I know we'll be getting in a moment, only because my mother asked this question, so she's already reached out to me, is how do you make bread without yeast? Because that is one thing that there is slightly a shortage on, just based on demand right now. So I'm also including a great soda/beer bread recipe. This recipe is a no-knead recipe. So when it comes to working with breads, often you mix your dough together and you have to knead it. Essentially work your dough to develop gluten. Gluten is a protein inside flour that makes things chewy. So imagine something like a cake or a pancake. We often say don't overmix because no one wants like a really chewy pancake or cake. You want it nice and tender. While things like breads, pizza doughs, we knead those for a substantial amount of time to develop the gluten, develop that chewiness. So for like a focaccia dough, you would basically have like water, yeast, sugar, because the yeast is a fungus. It eats sugar, metabolizes it, and turns it into carbon dioxide, the bubbles inside bread. And then the flour is your base stability that has that gluten. So we have our yeasty water, we have our flour, our gluten, some flavorings like maybe salt or garlic powder if you go that route. And we work it to develop the gluten, develop the chewiness. We let it rise a few times, so then the yeast gives you your bread a nice yeasty flavor to the carbon dioxide in the fermentation process, and then we bake it. While something like the soda or beer bread recipe, it's a no-knead recipe. You get a lot of the chew just from the flour itself. So it's not going to be as chewy as like a good pizza dough, but it's such a great, simple recipe where you just take dry ingredients. You need some leaveners, baking soda, baking powder. You add that with flour, sugar, and salt for flavor. And then you just pour in 12 ounces of either club soda or 12 ounces of beer. Mix that together with a little bit of butter or olive oil and bake it straight up. So really a low amount of time. Something that we might have on hand, baking soda and baking powder, and no yeast. So great recipe as well that I'll be supplying you guys with.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Nathaniel asked, what is the best way to make cheese sauce? Because his is always too stale.
Ooh, great question. Now, if there's something you guys didn't know about me, it's my love for cheese. I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but I love all cheeses except brie. I don't know why. Brie and I just don't have a good relationship unless it's like that truffle brie you could find at Trader Joe's. Oh, amazing. But when it comes to making good cheese sauce, there's lots of different ways. If you're even looking at like classic fondue recipes, they never use something called a roux. I like to lean towards using a roux. A roux, R-O-U-X, is essentially taking fat and flour. Most traditionally would be butter and flour. You melt it in a saucepan and you add any liquid to make it thick. So imagine like your gravy you're making during Thanksgiving times. You generally have butter and flour, and then you add your turkey stock or turkey drippings and you get a gravy. Now imagine you take that concept, you make your roux, and instead of a chicken stock or anything, you're going to add milk. Now you have what's called a bechamel, a white sauce. That you can use as like a base for chicken Alfredo. You can use it as a base for lasagnas when you have that lovely bechamel white sauce in it. But imagine you take this white sauce and then you just begin inundating it with cheese. That's how you get a sauce called Mornay, which is a cheese sauce. And then if you add more flavorings, you can essentially turn it into like queso, a nice nacho cheese sauce. What I've learned that some people do if you're making like a good cheese sauce for nachos or anything, we like to sometimes put in things like lime juice, lime zest, pickled jalapenos, tomatoes. Those are great additions. Just make sure they're going to be lower in acidity, because how you can get like a little staleness and a gritty texture is when you have too much acidity and you'll actually begin, lack of better terms, curdling the cheese and the milk and get this weird texture with it. So if you're going to be doing something like that, some drained canned tomatoes are fine, but fresh tomatoes are great as well, or fresh jalapenos rather than anything that's been like pickled. Use those as garnishes rather than stir-ins, and you should avoid that problem. And avoid things like vinegar, lime juice, lemon juice in there. A small amount is okay to brighten it up, add some acid, but don't go over the top if you want like a nice limey queso there, because that's where you'll get that grittiness and I guess that staleness, lack of better terms. So in short, make a roux, butter and flour, add milk to make a white sauce, and then melt a bunch of cheese into it and use that over nachos, add some paprika, some chili powder in there, some cayenne, or use it as a base for mac and cheese. And then invite me over when the shelter in place is done.
One last question here, and if anyone's listening that has a question for Igor, please just post it in the comments and we'll get to it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite pancake recipe?
Ooh, that is a great question. Well, there's a recipe we often teach, which is a Meyer lemon and ricotta pancake recipe. I love that. I'm sadly not going to include any pancake recipes for you guys, but again, feel free to message me. One that I grew up is something called labushki, which are basically like sour cream pancakes. Imagine you're making a buttermilk pancake, but instead of buttermilk, you use sour cream. You make them a little bit smaller, you fold in raisins, and you actually give them a nice fry and some butter so they're crispy on the outside. But my ultimate favorite pancake is not so much a recipe as a method. And we're going to call this the fluffy pancake method. If you guys have ever heard of or seen Japanese jiggly cake or Japanese fluffy pancakes, we're sort of using the same method. So you could even just take a classic pancake recipe. I like to lean towards a buttermilk pancake recipe. You could find dozens of views online. And I'm totally okay if anyone uses pancake mixes. That's completely fine. You basically have the same ingredients as you would in a classic pancake batter. But the only thing you would do differently is, let's say your pancake batter calls for 2 eggs. I want you to separate those eggs. I want the egg yolks to go into the batter normally, but then I want you to whip those egg whites until they're a meringue, very nice and fluffy, almost like egg clouds. And then you take that and you gently, gently, gently fold it into your pancake batter, and you get this airy quality. It's a very sponge cakey quality. And then you cook your pancakes like normal. If you did this with extra egg whites, you actually might even need like ring molds, because they're going to get like an inch tall each. But otherwise, you just have this really great airy souffle-like interior to the pancakes, which I just love, because now your pancake is a sponge for maple syrup, and who doesn't love that? So again, it's rather than a recipe, it's a method. Just separate your eggs and treat both parts differently. One just gets stirred in, one gets folded in after it's whipped. And if you want extra fluffy, add yourself an extra 1 or 2 egg whites, and you'll get maximum fluffiness.
With the shelter in place, Igor, what is the restaurant you miss the most?
Oh.
Or top 2, top 3?
Let's think about this. I mean, I sort of got like my top favorites in Castro Valley.
Yeah.
I miss going to Wen's, because there's always such a welcome hello anytime I go to Wen's. And that's actually something that I've been craving. It's a good bowl of pho, a good bowl of ramen, which I know places are delivering, so I should really capitalize on that. I do miss Southern Comfort Kitchen, because also there's just such a vibe anytime you go in there, and it's so hard for me to decide what to order, so I'll order a bit of everything. And I also do miss Kayomi. I miss going and getting some good sushi and ordering the sushi boat, and just that presentation as it comes out to the table and everyone in the restaurant looks at you. It's amazing. And I believe that boat runs just for like $40, $50, $60, and that's definitely enough food for like 2, 3, 4 people. I say 2 because, I'll eat half of the boat, but for some families, that's for 4. And, that's something if there's anything I miss, it's just that atmospheric presentation of being in a restaurant.
Yeah.
You can order the same quantity as a boat, but it's not going to get delivered on a boat to your home.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I believe all 3 of those restaurants are doing takeout, but like you said,
Wonderful.
it's just not the same of going into Wen's and seeing Philip and seeing his. He just shines. He's just such a, and the Brill guys, the Brill brothers over at Southern Comfort too. It's just it's. How are you coping not seeing people? It's so tough.
It really is tough. It really is tough. The good thing is, other than my live streams, which I'm able to interact with the community a bit, is I'm doing a lot of Zoom meetings with my friends and other people. So I'm able to at least spend like 2-3 hours a day just with people on the computer.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a gamer, so this is actually a great time to play video games because you stay connected with people, especially if they're like online MMORPGs. Somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about. So there's always ways to stay connected or find new hobbies. I'm also using an app called Olio. Olio is essentially an app when like a restaurant has, too much bread left over after the day, you can come pick it up. Or if a neighbor has like a lemon tree, which I recently posted, you can come pick up lemons. So even though I'm not actually interacting with people, it's nice to have those conversations of like, I'll trade you some preserves I made last summer for some lemons that you have right now and some grapefruit. So leave them at your door and I'll drop off the preserves. Just a little bit of a community building there. But that's really all I can possibly do. What's also very important for me is just to have a set schedule. If you've never written down your schedule from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, it's a great time to do that because I can often find myself just circling around the house like, okay, what do I do next? I'm out of ideas. But once it's written down, it's harder to deviate from it. You know exactly when you should work out or when you should schedule time for X, Y, and Z, when you should go out on a hike, things like that.
Yeah, totally. There was an interview that I saw with an astronaut. I forgot his name, but that was really the thing. He was up in space for a year, and that was the one thing that he said that really kind of kept him uh, not from feeling any adverse effects of being alone or isolated. Is that he had his schedule. He had certain times where he was going to do this, he was going to do that, he was going to do that, and it just gives you that sense of purpose, and you don't feel like you're floating out alone or aimless.
Absolutely. And it's a super important and great time to check on your friends, check on your family members. If you're not someone that likes to call people, at least send a text, make some small talk and, see how everyone's doing. And that'll really help with the connection. And if you're someone that likes to watch like YouTube videos, like it's weird, but whenever I watch like movies or YouTube videos, even if it's just like food reviews, I still feel like I'm connected to somebody. Like somebody might be watching it at the same time as me in a completely different area. I know it's sort of cheesy, but like, just think about stuff like that. If you're scrolling through Netflix or Hulu, guess what? Somebody's probably watching the same movie at the same time, so now you might not be super alone. I'm not sure if Netflix is still doing this. I heard it. I haven't used it yet, but Netflix may have a thing called like watching parties, where with a friend or family member in like two different houses, you can watch the same thing, and then there's a chat box where you guys can chat about the movie or the episode you're watching. So always a way that you can stay connected.
That's awesome. And this is not going to last forever. When this is over, there's going to be so much celebration and so much rejoicing. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. It's going to be like a new awakening. Right now, we're giving the earth a little bit of time to breathe, regenerate itself. I've been reading some reports about how in some places skies are clearer. And guess what? When this is over, we get to go enjoy all of that. So Just be a little bit more patient, Castro Valley. We're about halfway through, I believe. So take some time to focus on yourself. Make the foods you love. And then in a few weeks or months, we'll be back out in the world enjoying each other's companies.
Thank goodness. I don't see any other questions coming in. Matella said that she loves to cook and she would love to cook side by side with you someday.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I would love that. And we could even, for now, we could do it over apps. I'll feature you in one of my episodes if you want. We can cook something together. And in fact, one more time, I do just want to mention, I mentioned it before, but everyone, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Facebook, Igor Breyman. I'll post it in the comments below, or on Instagram at Chef Igor Breyman. I do live streams every 2 days or so, somewhere around 4 o'clock p.m. So if you want to watch like homemade focaccia, which I'll probably do tomorrow, being that I'm supplying you guys with the recipe, come pop in, ask me any questions. I'm available to answer all your food questions while we're here in the shelter in place.
Awesome. And I'll just give one more shout out. If anyone has a question, post it up now because it kind of seems like we've reached the end of our conversation. In the meantime, Pammy Harris, she mentioned her hometown is Castro Valley. Her maiden name is Pam Hall. I don't know where you're at now, Pammy, but we love you too. Come back to Castro Valley anytime you want, and we'll show you our hospitality.
Absolutely. And we have a lot more opens now. Give us just a few more months, and when we have that Daughtry building and the marketplace and whatnot, Castro Valley is going to be
it's going to be
popping.
shining. It's going to be shining.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like we've got any more questions. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up or discuss, Chef Igor?
No, it's just great to be involved right now. We'll get back to doing restaurant reviews and maybe doing some cooking shows in the near future.
I'd love to.
But otherwise, Castro Valley, hang in there. Again, I'm a resource for you guys, so feel free to reach out. It'll help me feel connected. It'll help you guys get some answers. And thank you, Robert, for hosting me tonight.
Thank you, Igor. Maybe what we can do is we could let you be an admin on the page, and you can just do a live stream takeout review, so that we would be social. We'll figure something out.
Oh yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, Igor. Always a pleasure. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. You as well. Bye, everybody.
Well, thank you to everyone who had questions, and I can't really express how much joy it is to work with Igor, to have him involved in what we do here at Castro Valley News. You guys have probably seen a lot of his reviews. I mentioned before, I complimented Igor as we were talking. His joy and his passion and his love and his excitement for food is just so inspiring, and it's fantastic to know that his passion, he found his passion, and he's actually doing his passion, and it's just awesome. So with that said, I don't think we have anything else going on here. If there's any questions that you guys wanted to throw at me, feel free to did I say feel free? Feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll get to them. There weren't many other things that I had on the top of my head that I wanted to bring up. Thank you, Todd Anglin, for posting the Feed Eden link. Todd is a local real estate guy, man about town, font of information, gives his heart and soul to the community. Top-notch dude. Thank you, Todd, for tuning in. If you have a question or a comment, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll get to it. And if not, we'll just sign off in a couple minutes. Thank you for the question, Jay Goldberg. I think I know Jay. I think he's a photographer, and he's a super nice guy. He said that he cooks sous vide with for creme brulee, which is awesome. So again, if you want to reach Chef Igor Breyman, we have his profile posted up in chat, and you could message him with questions, or you can check him out on Instagram. He is doing he's actually doing live cooking presentations on Instagram, like he said, every other couple days. So pleasure to watch him work. He just knows everything about cooking. It's amazing the amount of knowledge in that gentleman's head and heart for cooking. Since there's no more questions coming up, again, please, if you can, look up that link for the American Red Cross to donate blood. You'd be doing a lot of good for a lot of people who are in need. With this shelter in place, there's a lot of the blood drives that have been canceled, and it's the supply is low from what I continuously hear on the news. That link is in the chat for the American Red Cross to go ahead and make yep, there it is. It's www.redcrossblood.org/give and it is in the comments. It's in the chat, excuse me. With that said, we're reaching almost an hour here. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. We will be back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Hopefully by then we will have more good news about the situation with the shelter in place. Continue to shelter in place as much as you can. I know it gets very difficult to remain in your home all day. It ain't easy, but the more that we do it, the better we'll be off. And if you do have to go out, there's a lot more. Well, here's actually another thing that I did want to bring up, and I'm glad the train of thought led to this. There's a chain of grocery stores. I think Food for Less is one of the there's none. I don't think there's too many of them local, so it's not really a Castro Valley thing. But this chain is going to be requiring staff and customers to wear some sort of face covering, a mask, a scarf, for this, something that will cover your nose and your mouth in case you sneeze or someone else sneezes. I think that really needs to happen. My own personal approach is every time I leave the house, I have a face covering. I don't have masks. I use a t-shirt with blue shop towels inside. I did some research, and those are supposedly effective. I think, like I said, and Igor said, the more we do to pound the heck out of that curve and bang it down, the sooner we can return to some sort of normalcy. And that normalcy is not going to be the normalcy we have known from the past. It's going to be different. We're still going to have to be socially distanced. It's going to be tough for people who are looking for a significant other, because how do you get close to the significant other during this time? You're going to have to text. You're going to have to do the FaceTime. You're going to have to do whatever app that you do to talk to these people. But I think covering using the face cover when you go out anywhere, I think is going to be extremely helpful. Even if we can just prevent one instance instant where this thing is transferred to another person, I think is going to be extremely helpful, because you don't that one person can turn into five other people, and it just goes on and on. So and I was at Safeway day before yesterday, and I did see a lot of the staff there. And let me also mention, uh, there's a lot of talk about people on the front lines. Obviously, our first responders, the Alameda County sheriffs, Falk, I hope I said that right, the paramedics, CHP, Castro Valley. Shout out to Officer Walters. Shout out to Sergeant Ray Kelly. Shout out to uh, Deputy Swalwell, Alameda County sheriffs. Lumping into those first responders, those heroes, also our nurses, the ER people in the ER working, the grocery store workers. For the longest time, they're there, and continuing, trying to keep business as usual, with us. Some of the folks coming in there, a lot of the folks coming in there, a lot of concern, a lot of worry about where we're going to get our food. Um, a lot of the delivery services are kind of iffy. A lot of times you can't get a delivery date from Safeway. You can't get a delivery date for them to come and deliver. So these grocery folks really deserve a tip of the cap, because they are on the front lines, keeping the shelves stocked as much as possible. And I really think that it's a good idea for more of these grocery stores to strongly suggest, maybe even require, that customers cover their faces, and also allow their employees to cover their faces, and make the protection, the equipment that will protect them available to them. with that said, no other questions have came in, and we are even more closer. We're at an hour. So thanks again for Igor for calling in and sharing his expertise. It's always a pleasure to hear from Igor, and hopefully we'll get something figured out to where we can do a live stream review with him so that he can share more of his expertise. Give him a look-see on Instagram or Facebook. Both of those both those profiles are in the chat. With that said, like I said again, next Tuesday we'll be here 7 p.m. We'll be talking about something. Uh, Post a comment in the messages. Post a comment in the chat if I'm blathering like I'm doing right now, which means it's time to wrap this up. So thanks again to everyone. Thank you to my moderator, Mr. Yan. He is like Yoda. He is a ninja at grabbing stuff that you need to see, links, and posting up information. With all that said, I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning. I am Roberto, and as always, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Castro Valley, stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home, cover your face. We got this. We'll get through this.